So a few things before we get started. First, I just want to go over the agenda. So we have welcome and introductions. If you can, please type in your name and your organization in the chat. That would be so helpful for us. We will get into group conduct quickly, and then Keely will take us through child nutrition and food access. I will do the connection between 3Squares Vermont and school meals. And then we have some time for question and answers. I do want to note, even though we do have time in the schedule for Q&A, please feel free to put questions in the chat at any time, especially if they feel really relevant to something we're saying at the moment. Additionally, you can either type your chat or type your question in the chat, or you can write your name and the word stack next to it so that we can order who would like to ask a question orally, and you can unmute yourself and ask that question. And then we will wrap up. And before we jump in, you might have seen this video already, but we are kicking off all of our sessions with this really short video from Honora Horton, who is Hunger Free Vermont's Executive Director. So we're going to take a minute to listen to that. Let me know if you can't hear it.
Hello. On behalf of everyone at Hunger Free Vermont, welcome to the 2020 3Squares Vermont Outreach and Policy Conference. We really wish we could all be with you in person today, but let's be connected anyway from wherever we are in Vermont. I don't have to tell you that this is a time of crisis. 1 in 4 Vermonters are experiencing hunger and food insecurity during this pandemic. People of color are 4 times as likely as white people to be experiencing hunger in Vermont right now. Women are twice as likely to be experiencing hunger as are men. And households with young children are also twice as likely to be experiencing hunger in Vermont right now than households without young children. We're all here today because we're committed to reducing the suffering and harm of hunger. We're looking ahead to what we know is going to be a really tough winter. And we know that when all the food box and restaurant meal programs have expired, 3Squares Vermont is the stable foundation of food security for so many people in our state. It is a true privilege to be engaged in this work with you. Know that Hunger Free Vermont is here to support you and to fight like hell to expand and protect and defend the federal nutrition programs that serve so many. Even though we're not all physically together in one place today, we are all on unceded land stewarded by the Abenaki peoples for thousands of years. Let's honor that truth by using what we learn here today to respectfully serve all the peoples of Vermont and to work to end not just hunger, but the systemic injustices that cause hunger. Thank you for the profound difference you make, and may you be well.
Oh no. All right. And some group conduct for us. This is a virtual conference, so things look a little different. Again, please introduce yourself in the chat. Name your organization if you can as well. I think everyone should be muted upon arrival, but please make sure your audio is muted unless you are talking. Again, submit your questions in the chat. I also want to note that I actually started my role as a food security specialist in July. So if there are some questions, for me anyway, that I might not be able to answer, we also do have Phil Morin on the line, who is Hunger Free Vermont's food security advocacy manager. So he might be able to jump in and answer them. And if none of us can, we will be sure to note your questions and get back to you later. And lastly, again, there might be some hiccups with technology. So just join us with grace and humor and we will get through this together. But for now, I'm going to pass this off to my colleague Keely, who will get us started.
Thank you, Kayla. So my name is Keely Agan, and I am on the Hunger Free Vermont Child Nutrition Team. And I'm here today to talk with everyone about child hunger rates and current meal access programs and how children and child nutrition relates to 3Squares Vermont. So let's see if I can move my screen here. Oh.
You might have to just like click the screen. Sometimes that'll
Oh my gosh, did
get
that
you
work?
through.
And there we go. We're here. We're jiving. All right, child hunger and food insecurity in Vermont. So when we're talking about rates of food insecurity in Vermont children, we know that last year, pre-pandemic, over 40% of Vermont children qualified for free and reduced price meals at school. That means their families met an income threshold to receive these free school meals. And we also know that this number has increased quite a bit due to the pandemic. The implications of food insecurity can absolutely change a child's life. Let's talk a little bit about the implications of food insecurity, specifically in children. Food insecurity means that we're going to be seeing nutrient deficiencies, developmental delays, poor health, and higher rates of obesity. We see lower grades when children are food insecure. We know that when children are hungry, they really are not able to focus on actually learning. We see higher rates of absenteeism and tardiness at school. And we also are seeing increased rates of anxiety, aggression, and depression disorders. School nutrition programs are critical to student success. Schools and community organizations use many federal programs to feed children. Programs that are in place to feed children are the school breakfast program and the National School Lunch Program that operate during school. The Child and Adult Care Food Program, or CACFP, that runs in childcare and early education programs, and the Summer Food Service Program and at-risk after-school programs that operate outside of school hours. A school that is eligible and participating in every available program would be serving over 1,000 meals to each student over the course of a year. School meals feed healthy bodies and healthy minds. This picture on the right is from a meal that was served this summer at the Miltontown School District. Students who eat school meals eat healthier at school. Consuming meals at school has actually shown to improve education outcomes for students. And a recent USDA study found that the nutritional quality of lunches has actually improved 41% since the 2010 meal pattern requirement changes during the Obama administration. And we actually are seeing that participation rates are higher in the schools where there are the healthiest meals, where there are robust farm to school programs, and where there are options for kids to build healthy and nutritious meals. So when we're talking about these child nutrition programs, they are federal programs, which means that schools and daycares and any program participating in these programs, in these federal meal programs, are actually receiving money for each reimbursable meal that they give to a student. So a reimbursable meal is made up of 5 components: fruits and vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy. And this has been recorded as being a meal that has all of the nutrients needed for a student to learn and be healthy and be able to focus on their schoolwork. And so each meal, no matter if it's for the Summer Food Service Program or the National School Lunch Program, will be made up of these components. Now we're going to talk about free meals at school. I'm going to begin by stating, and I'll reiterate throughout the entirety of my presentation, that currently, because of waivers from the federal USDA, are free. All students 18 and under, all children 18 and under, are able to access free school meals from all around Vermont. However, it's still recommended that families fill out a school meal application. A free and reduced price school meal application is usually what families fill out to see if they're eligible for their student to receive free school meals. And so this is really important because the percentage of free and reduced students that a school has, the more funding they can get from the government in order to be able to make sure that their program stays high quality, that they're able to put more money into our local economy by purchasing local foods and supporting farmers. So it's super important that we get families filling out these applications. Families need to fill out these applications every year. So the reason that families are being encouraged still, even though kids are receiving free meals due to waivers, is because these applications are really important to determining the Title I funding for education that schools are receiving, as well as making sure that these families will continue to be accessing free school meals once the waivers are lifted. So as of this point right now, we know that the waivers have been extended through the end of December, December 31st. And fingers crossed they get extended even further. But if they don't, we really want to make sure that these families are all set up to continue receiving these lovely school meals. Step 2. There are some children who are directly certified for free meals without having to fill out a free and reduced price meal application each year. A family could be directly certified if they are receiving 3Squares Vermont or Reach Up. Children who are considered homeless are also directly certified to receive free school meals. Migrant families and children in state-designated foster care. So again, directly certified means that because of an extenuating circumstance, a child will automatically be receiving free meals regardless of if the family has filled out a school meal application or not. Often we will recommend that if a family has applied for 3Squares Vermont, they reach out to the school liaison to make sure that they're aware that this is something that's being processed and that they can make sure that as soon as possible that student can be receiving free school meals. We're going to talk a little bit about universal school meals right now. Pre-pandemic, Hunger Free Vermont was working diligently on a campaign that we've been preparing for years to recommend that Vermont offer universal school meal programs to every student in Vermont. We recognize the importance of school meals in terms of growing healthy children and making sure that all children have the tools available to be able to learn to the best of their ability. But the pandemic has really kind of turned that effort on its head in an interesting way, because currently schools all over Vermont are operating a universal meal model where meals are universally available to children, regardless of the income eligibility of families. So again, currently due to federal waivers, all children 18 and under can access free school meals all over Vermont, regardless of income or if they're enrolled in the school. In normal times, there are two main ways that a school can offer a universal meal program. Again, universal meals meaning that every student can access these meals. One way that a school can offer a universal meal program is through what's called the Community Eligibility Provision, or CEP. Direct certification is used. Remember, we talked about direct certification, meaning that there's an extenuating circumstance which puts a percentage of children already at the point of receiving free meals. If you're using CEP, that percentage is used with a multiplier. And instead of having to collect applications, a school can use that number to kind of predict what they would be receiving in reimbursement from the government. So it's using these numbers of how many students are directly certified to be able to project how much money they'll be receiving from the government to fund their food service program without having to charge any students. A school is only eligible to participate in CEP if they have 40% directly certified students. They must have 40% or higher directly certified students in order to participate in this program. And this is why it's so important to encourage families to apply for 3Squares Vermont. Because remember, if a family is eligible or participating in 3Squares Vermont, those children are directly certified, meaning that the school can have a higher number and be able to run the CEP program. The other universal meal program is called Provision 2. The way that Provision 2 works is that a school has a really, really big application campaign the first year to determine the reimbursement rate for the following 4 years. These programs last for 4 years before a school has to reapply. So for Provision 2, again, it's really important that we encourage families to fill out school meal applications in that first year so that the school can get a higher number of reimbursement rate from the government. And both of those programs would mean that all students eat for free. Universal school meals help all Vermont children succeed. When every student eats free, cafeterias are inviting and simple and satisfying places without stigma. Eating is elementary education. We know that one can't happen without the other. No student should learn what hunger feels like at school. And we need a state-level solution to make universal school meals available to all Vermont students. It's really interesting right now that we're able to gather data about what it's like when most schools in Vermont are operating a universal meal program, and we're really excited to hopefully someday post-pandemic be able to analyze all of the amazing outcomes that school meals being universal has given to us and how many children it's helped to raise out of food insecurity and hunger. So what are meals currently looking like? I've alluded to it a little bit, but now through at least December 31st, all kids 18 and under can access free school meals from sites all over the state, regardless of whether or not the child is enrolled in the school. The ways that you can find out where these free meals are being offered all over the state is through the USDA Find Meals for Kids tracker. And the Find Meals for Kids tracker is really lovely because it's updated by state agencies weekly, so it's super up to date. But Hunger Free has worked really hard to create a specifically Vermont spreadsheet that works county by county and district by district to provide where and how these meals are being served all throughout Vermont. And again, our spreadsheet is updated weekly as well as more sites get started. And it's really important to remember that school meals are safe. They're prepared by professionals who are held to the highest standard of safety in their cafeterias and kitchens. They're healthy. Again, the USDA guidelines ensure that these meals contain all the components necessary to get all the proper nutrients for children. And they're convenient. They're meant to be located in places where they can be picked up for free. There are waivers that are in place right now that make it so that parents can pick up the meals without the children having to be present with them. They don't have to be what we call congregate feeding sites. They can be grab and go so that we don't have to hang around and risk the spread of sickness. So school meals are safe, healthy, and convenient. And how do 3Squares Vermont and school meals connect? Well, 3Squares Vermont and free school meals have the same eligibility requirements. That's why if a household is already receiving 3Squares Vermont, the children are automatically eligible to be receiving free school meals. If a household is already receiving school meals because they filled out a school meal application, but they're not participating in 3Squares Vermont, they're actually likely eligible to be receiving 3Squares Vermont benefits. So that's an area where we can make that connection and get a family connected to 3Squares Vermont. If a household with school-age children is participating in 3Squares Vermont, like we said, their students are going to be receiving free meals without having to fill out an application. And remember, when children eat for free at school, families are able to stretch their budget for meals at home even further and have more flexibility with their expenses. So that's closing out my portion on meals for children and school meals and meals in childcare and how that relates to 3Squares Vermont. And I'm going to pass the baton back to Kayla to continue with the presentation.
Had to unmute myself. All right, thank you so much, Keely. So I'm going to take us through connecting 3Squares Vermont to school meals, as Keely just set us up for. 3Squares Vermont supports the security and well-being of families with kids. So 3Squares Vermont is a monthly benefit that can be used to purchase food, but the participation in the program can also connect households and families to so many other programs. So some of those connected programs to 3Squares Vermont are free school meals, as Keely talked about before, Crop Cash, so folks can use their EBT card to double their 3Squares Vermont dollars at farmers markets to buy fresh fruits and vegetables and phone assistance, and possibly WIC and Medicaid as well. So there's this thing that's called categorical eligibility, and households are automatically income eligible for 3Squares Vermont if they are a participant in any of these programs. So that includes Reach Up, also Supplemental Security Income, SSI, and the Vermont Earned Income Tax Credit, known as EITC, and we'll talk about that right now. So the Earned Income Tax Credit, the EITC is a really great program that helps to get more families' feet in the door to accessing 3Squares Vermont benefits. And so in other words, the EITC is a great doorway into 3Squares Vermont because otherwise there's so many families who actually might not be eligible, but because they do have the EITC, they might actually be eligible for 3Squares Vermont. So there are a few things to note around the EITC. You must have earned income from a job. You must have a child or children under the age of 18 in the household. It must have been received within the last 12 months. And the EITC applies to working individuals between the ages of 25 and 65. So again, as kind of noted before, even if their income is above the gross monthly income limit, families are categorically eligible for 3Squares Vermont by receiving the EITC. As service providers, it is really important to encourage families to check if they have received the EITC after filing their taxes, because so many people don't know that they've actually received it. And you can tell families to call the Vermont Department of Taxes to actually find out if they did in fact receive the EITC. I also want to note that in the 2019 tax year, families were able to receive up to $6,557 in tax credit, as shown in this graphic. And for 2020, that number will go up to $6,660. Maximizing benefits for families. So the dependent care deduction is key for families to qualify for a higher benefit. This deduction is focused on expenses associated with care so that members of the household can go to work, school, job training, look for employment, or etc. So there are a few types of expenses that fall under this category. So formal, informal, after school and summer camps, different types of care. When I say informal, I mean something like an informal arrangement with family or friends can actually count towards this, which is really great. All money paid out of pocket after subsidies, mileage to and from care. So the reimbursement rate is 0.585 cents per mile. and actual transportation. So bus passes or paying for borrowing someone else's car, for instance. So I included this to give you a snapshot of what it actually looks like when filling out your self-reporting of childcare or adult care services. And what's really neat about this is that it really is self-declared. So unless something is flagged as extremely questionable, typically it is just taken for what it is, which is also really great in this case. Special rules for youth. Homeless students should be directly certified by their district or school for free school meals. So households do not actually need a permanent place of residence to apply or qualify for 3Squares Vermont. That means all that is needed is really a permanent place to receive mail. So you could use a school address, community organization, or a general delivery at a PO box. And for youth who are living separately from family, if they are 18 or older, they can apply on their own for 3Squares Vermont. And if they are under the age of 18, they need to prove that they are living independently and not under the guardianship of an adult. Having more families enrolled in 3Squares Vermont also benefits the school in so many ways. And here are some of those ways. It increases the direct certification numbers, it strengthens the school meal program, and it reduces unpaid student meal debts. I also really liked how Keely mentioned before, when students receive free school meals, the cafeteria becomes a place that doesn't feel like it's riddled with stigma, which is something that schools all across the US are battling. And so having more families enrolled in the program really can help benefit the school and the overall culture around food and food access. So now let's talk about taking action, right? How can we take the information Keely and I shared and do something with it? So a few things to consider when taking action. 1, be armed with accurate and accessible information. 2, reach people where they are and provide support when needed. And 3, spread public awareness. So opportunities for partnerships and outreach. Schools are a really great place to take action, to spread awareness, to spread messaging, because there's so many ways to do this within a school. So this could be a PTO meeting, parent-teacher conferences, resource fairs, wellness committees and events, and open houses. And then some other really great places could be at childcare centers, after-school programs, and community dinners. What I will say about this is that try different methods, right, in order to reach different people. So have PTO meetings and talk about it. Talk one-on-one with teachers and families. School administrators are also really important to build relationships with. I know that's something that we do at Hunger Free Vermont. But the more people and places we can get messaging out to, the better. So in terms of messaging 3Squares Vermont and school meals, it's so important that people know that 3Squares Vermont helps their school community and individual families. And it's also so important that we reduce stigma. We mentioned this before, but having really key messaging points around the connection between 3Squares Vermont and school meals can really play a part in reducing the stigma that currently exists. So here are some key messaging points for you all to take away. 1 is that receiving 3Squares Vermont benefits and school meals saves the family money. Households with school-age children help the school when they apply to 3Squares Vermont. Federal dollars are brought into our state and administered through 3Squares Vermont benefits. And every dollar of benefits spent is equal to nearly $2 of economic activity. And lastly, you can help provide added capacity to the hardworking individuals who are working with the future of our community. So a question I have for you, and you don't have to answer it now, but please take it away with you and ponder as you go. But what is one action you will take after you leave here today? And if you have any follow-up questions or thoughts around taking action, please feel free to ask us as well. We also have outreach materials that we could send to you that you can use in your spaces, in your offices or your schools. So note that as well, and always feel free to reach out. But now we have some time for Q&A. I haven't been monitoring the chat either. I don't know if anything, nope. Okay. Well, I'll jump in and also just note, along the lines of requesting outreach materials, if there's anything that you want, when we send a follow-up email, either tomorrow afternoon or Thursday morning after the conference ends, we're gonna link a new tool that we're hoping to roll out, and it's a request for outreach materials. So you can go in and select all of the outreach materials that you want and how many, and then we can actually ship it to you. So if anything pops up or piques your interest after you leave here today in regards to 3Squares Vermont and school meals, keep that in mind and take a look at what we offer in our follow.
I see that Sasha has asked a question in the chat, and it's a really lovely question. What kind of data are you collecting to show the impact of universal school meals during this natural experiment of COVID-19 waivers? So I know that there are a few studies that are being put together just assessing hunger in Vermont in general. There were two really lovely UVN studies that we're looking into rates of hunger and food insecurity in Vermont. There was one at the beginning of the pandemic in spring, and then one halfway through now, or not halfway through, but like currently assessing what's changed and what stayed the same. So there are a lot of places collecting that hard data on where people are accessing food, which is super important for us to know, even related to 3Squares Vermont. You know, how many families are accessing these benefit programs versus how many families are accessing school meals. So rates like that are really important for us to know. I know that in spring, right when schools had closed, school meals were actually, in one study, the second most accessed food program period in the state. But we're also talking to all of the different champions at the schools and listening anecdotally to what their experiences have been, what their barriers have been to families being able to access these meals. Is it transportation, stigma, knowledge, etc.? And we've also been trying to take feedback from parents and put all of the anecdotal and hard data together to figure out kind of what's going on. And we also know, taking it with a grain of salt, that these are also extenuating circumstances, so that if schools were operating universal meals outside of the pandemic setting, that it would look a little different. But this gives us a really unique opportunity to parse out best practices and barriers. So we're very excited to be able to hopefully take all these studies and anecdotes and pull them together into making our being advocates for universal school meals argument even stronger.
And I see a question from Linda about eligibility and applications. If someone participates in 3Squares, they get free school meals. If they are getting free school meals, will that trigger enrollment in 3Squares? That's a good question. And so I think that like, and I'll answer part and Phil, please step in, or Keely if I'm missing something. So my immediate thought, and Keely talked about this a little bit, on one hand, especially in non-COVID times and having all schools operate on like a universal school meals model, it is like this reciprocal relationship. So in some cases, families might have 3Squares Vermont and then realize that they can access free school meals. And then on the other hand, finding out that they can get free school meals might actually trigger them to, or hearing about that might allow them to look up or find out if they actually are in fact eligible for 3Squares Vermont. So it can kind of go both ways in that sense. And so that's why it's really important in messaging to families around free school meals that they should really find out if they are eligible for 3Squares Vermont, because it really does benefit in both ways. And again, not just for them, but for the school community and other families as well. I don't know if I'm spinning your question to just go deeper than it has to be, but I am curious about now that schools are, at least until December 31st, all students get access to free school meals. So on one hand, if we don't push and advocate for messaging around this, I am worried that potentially some families might not put two and two together, that once free school, say December 31st rolls around or January 1st, and the schools are no longer offering universal school meals, and families lose that because they are not enrolled in 3Squares Vermont, we'll have to have a shift in communication and help those families understand their resources and what's out there. So if we take now until December 31st to empower and encourage families to note or to look into 3Squares Vermont, that'll really help a lot of folks when January rolls around and free school meals are not offered to everyone under the age of 18. I don't know if that fully answers the question, or if Keely or Phil, you want to add. And Linda, if I can clarify it all, please let me know.
I was just going to say, so I worked in school meal food service, and one part of my job was processing applications and also receiving the direct certification list. So what happens is every month or so, the school liaison will get a list of the children who are directly certified, depending on whatever extenuating circumstance they are, to be directly certified. The reason that we encourage families who are newly applying for 3Squares Vermont to call their school liaison and let them know that the process is happening is so that that liaison can keep an eye out and make sure that that process happens on the school's end as soon as possible. So if you are applying for 3Squares Vermont, the children will automatically get put on that direct certification list to receive free school meals. We should let families know that at every point that we can. If a family applies for free school meals and fills out a school meal application, unless there's a champion in that school that's really communicating with families, they aren't aware that they might be eligible for 3Squares Vermont as well. And so that's why it's really important that we understand the connection between being eligible for free school meals and being eligible for 3Squares Vermont, so that champions within the school, like school admin or food service directors or whoever's dealing with these applications, can also flag for families, hey, here's some 3Squares Vermont, outreach material. And did you know that if your child receives free school meals, you might be eligible for 3Squares Vermont? That's the connection that we really want to emphasize for families. But if you do receive free school meals, you're not automatically also receiving 3Squares Vermont.
Awesome. Thank you, Kayla and Keely, for tackling those questions. They were, your answers were spot on, and I'm grateful that you were able to do that. One thing that I'll add, just as an a new, or maybe something that you've seen before, is that throughout the pandemic, Hunger Free Vermont has been using a flyer in our communities called Stretch Your Budget with Vermont Food Programs, where both 3 Squares Vermont and Meals for Kids are discussed. And so that's something that we'll continue to update with information, but it's just to Kayla's point earlier, doing that outreach to make sure that every child in school has access to food.
Well, as you see also, Keely and my emails are up on the slide. So if anything also does come to mind after this, please feel free to email both of us or one of us. We'd be happy to answer your questions at any time. So I just wanted to say that too. It doesn't stop here. Always feel free to contact us whenever something pops up for you.
So something I really do want to emphasize as well is that there is going to be, I mentioned something called the community eligibility provision early in my presentation, which is one of the ways that schools can offer universal meals during normal times. And that relies on the amount of children that are directly certified for the school. And we are already planning with the Agency of Education a big campaign for enrolling schools in the CEP after the pandemic or after these waivers are lifted. So we really want a huge surge of families that qualify to be receiving 3 Squares Vermont, because that means more schools have the opportunity to participate in these universal programs once these waivers are lifted. So I just want to emphasize that that's really important, and that's one of the awesome ways that we can connect families with even more food access programs.
And if there aren't any more questions right now, it is totally okay for us to end a few minutes early. If anyone has any last minute questions, definitely plop them in the chat. And again, like I said, always feel free to reach out to us. But for the meantime, I do want to, this is the last session of today, day one of the conference. So I just want to thank you all for joining us for day one today. Oh, you are welcome, Beth. Making sure we're not getting questions. It's really awesome to see you all. It's unfortunate we can't all be in person, but I'm so glad we were able to put this together. Tomorrow, we will pick back up at 9 o'clock with our outreach roundtable sessions, which will be a really fun and exciting way to start the day. There's a lot of great people to listen to and learn from and have conversations with. So please check out the agenda. As a reminder, you can find the full conference agenda on vermontfoodhelp.com or in your email inbox. And tomorrow morning, you should get an email scheduled to go out at 7 a.m. with tomorrow's agenda links to be fresh in your email inbox if you don't want to locate old emails. And then I think that's it in terms of closing up housekeeping. We hope to see you all tomorrow. And if you can't join us, there will be recorded sessions sent out at as a part of the follow-up email, either tomorrow afternoon or Thursday morning. So keep an eye out on that. Beth, will there be an opportunity to give feedback on this conference? I do think that we plan on having a feedback or evaluation survey embedded in that email as well. So just keep your eyes peeled, but definitely please provide feedback We want to hear everything, especially because this is a totally new format for us. And so I'm sure there's a lot that we can learn and grow and come back stronger for the next time we have to do something virtual, but hopefully that is never. But again, thank you so much. And if there are no last minute questions or closing thoughts, Keely or Phil, I think we might be done here.
Thank
Thank you
you.
both.
Yeah, of course.